La la la. So, I started making you something. I'm thrilled to have a reason. La Shabbat Shalom. Hi. La la.
Welcome to those walking in.
Shabbat Shalom, Chaverim. Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Katz.
Shabbat Shalom, Cantor.
Shabbat Shalom to our band, to Ed and Gilad. It's like kind of like I'm in the preschool.
Yes.
Shabbat Shalom to all of our, but Shabbat Shalom. Just like to say it a lot. And Shabbat Shalom to the Zoomiverse.
Shabbat Shalom to all who are on Zoom. Feel free, by the way, to put your cameras on if you want. That way people can see you, you can see each other. You're on gallery, so everyone here can see you as well.
Shabbat Shalom. La la. Mazel tov. Hey, Rabbi Rosenberg. Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. Ari. La la la. Hey, welcome, Berman and Rosenberg family. And another last name for another bit. Welcome everybody who's walking in. Welcome as we get settled, taking a few deep breaths, or maybe getting energized, whatever feels right.
We're on page 24 if you want to follow along.
Shalom Aleichem,
Malachei Hasharet,
Malachei Elyon, Nami Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Nami Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruchuni, Baruchuni V'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malach Hamlachim, שלום עליכם מלאכי השרת מלאכי עליון כי מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך ברוך הוא.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome, everyone.
So one of the things, if you've ever been in Israel before, you know that in Israel you constantly are rushing on Friday. In fact, actually, the way that Israel is, you almost lose a day of the weekend. You work Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It's off by a day from our schedule. And Friday, which is technically the weekend, is also the date to get ready for Shabbat. But woe be you if you save your cooking until then, because you might need to go to the market only to find that it is incredibly crowded. People are rushing through the streets because they want to make Shabbat perfect. They want to find the right ingredients. They want to find the right taste, the right smells, the right feel. Shabbat is a time that you don't lip toward. In Israel, at least, it's a time that you rush toward. But one of the things about Shabbat is that sometimes we in America come not fully prepared. And that's okay. Today we opened up our fridge to realize that the recipe that we were going to make, we lacked a number of ingredients, one of which was lemons. Another was paprika. And so we had to pivot, my wife really, Ayala, had to pivot and make do with what we had in the pantry. And in doing so, Shabbat looked a little bit different than we had planned, but no less beautiful, no less special. Because today is a work day, because we have to do our toil and then immediately go straight to Shabbat. Shabbat, in America at least, is a consolation. Shabbat, we understand, might be imperfect, but it teaches us that despite that imperfection, we can still find nuggets of perfection built in. All of you are coming here a little bit imperfect, because I bet most of us haven't exactly had time to prepare for what Shabbat means. To spend the time meditating, to then be in a headspace for a service to really penetrate. But that's okay. You're missing your key ingredient, your lemon and your paprika. But the goal is to make do. The goal is to figure out over the course of this service how, without lemons, you can make that lemonade. How you can figure out in your hearts and your souls to get what you need out of this service and out of these next 25 hours. Allow that imperfection in, and in doing so, make today a taste of perfection. And so we usher in that taste of perfection through the lighting of our candles and the blessing of our wine. And Rafa tomorrow will be called up for the first time as bar mitzvah for the Torah. And so I want to call him to come up with his sister and his parents as we turn to page 2 and 3.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של שבת.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'hava uvratzon hinhilanu zikaron lema'aseh bereshit ki hu yom tehillah lemikra kodesh zeher litziat mitzrayim kivanu b'hata ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava u'ratzon hinhaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh haShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim. Wait, but you got to take the mask off so you can do the wine. There it is. Yep. L'chaim. Go. Shkoch.
All right. So you guys can take a seat. Congratulations. We're going to continue. We're on page number 20 for the singing of L'cha Dodi.
לך דודי, הלילה, ירלללי לקראת כלה, ירלללי בני שבת, בני שבת נקרא, לך דודי, הלילה, ירלללי לקראת כלה. Kala, la 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 la, Pnei Shabbat, Pnei Shabbat, Nikal Bela. Yishamor v'zachor, b'diburecha. Yishianu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem u'tiferet v'litechila join us, ya la la ya la 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 khadudi la 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 ya la 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 likrat la ya la 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 bnei Shabbat nikabela. לקראת שבת, לכו ונלכה, כי מקום קדם נסוכה סוף מעשה ומחשבה תחילה יא לה 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 לך תודי אליי 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 יא לה 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 לקראת קלה יא לה 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 בני שבת נקבלה. Verse 5 התעוררי כי באורך קומי אורי שיר לדברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה
Let's hear you.
יא לה 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 לך תודי אליי 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 יא לה 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 לקראת קלה יא לה 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 פני שבת נקבלה. If you are able, we invite you to rise. בואי ושלום עטרת בלה גם בשמחה ובצהלה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלה
Let's hear you.
יא לה 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 לך תודי יא לה 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 לקראת קלה יא לה 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 פני שבת נקווה לה 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 לך תודי אליי 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 יא לה 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 לקראת קלה יא לה לה פני שבת
We remain standing, page 28.
אדוני המבורך
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
We're seated together. We're on the top of page 31. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars, creator of the tide of time and light. You guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to eternity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Ma'ariv, Aravim, page 32.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו וקומנו, נשיח בחוקך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגבם הלילה. ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה
אשר אנוכי
מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבביך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ושוכבך
וקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
So, what is the birthday of the Jewish people? It's actually pretty hard to know. The birthday of humanity, by the way, is Rosh Hashanah. It's not actually the birthday of the first day of creation when God said, "Let there be light." It's actually the sixth day of creation. But the question is, when would you mark the beginning of the Jewish people? Was it when Abraham listened to God and went to a land that he didn't know? Was it when Isaac finally fell in love with Rebekah? Was it when Jacob had his 12th child and kind of cemented the 12 tribes of Israel, or when they went down to go meet Joseph in Egypt? The answer I've always thought is when the Jews crossed the sea to freedom. Because in doing so, they go through the actual metaphorical birth canal, right, of the two different walls of water as they come out the other side. And they go from a people non-coalesced into one that is united and whole. Now, it's going to take some wandering. It's going to take some direction. It's going to take some mistakes, 40 years in the desert, before they grow up. But you're not whole on the day of your birth. You're just beginning to learn and to be formed. And so every single year, on the last day of Pesach, at least in Israel, and the second to last day in America, the seventh day of Passover, that is actually the birthday of the Jewish people in my mind. Because that's the day, according to tradition, that we crossed the sea to freedom. But what's interesting is that you don't wait for that day to think about freedom. In fact, every single day, you kind of remember the birthday of the Jewish people and you thank God for the ability to be free, for the ability to be a people by saying the words that the Israelites sang as they crossed the sea, Mi chamocha. And in doing so, you acknowledge that though there are big days, every day you have to take a little bit of that spirit of thanks that you have, whether it's for yourself for being alive or for the person whose birthday it is, that they are in your world. And you have to remember that. Now, today is not one of those small days. Today is one of those big days as we mark Cantor Meredith Greenberg's birthday. We'll sing to her at the end of services. But hopefully, every day you come and pray, you feel thankful that she's in your community. Today only magnifies it because it's her birthday. And in the same way, every day, you don't wait for that seventh day of Passover before you feel that sense of joy and wholeness of the birthing of the Jewish people. But rather, you're reminded on page 40 with this following prayer.
Mi chamocha bailim Adonai. Sing up together. Mi chamocha bailim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar v'kodesh. Nora tehilo tosefele. Nora tehilo tosefele. Malechutecha ra'u banecha. היה לפני משה ומרים זה אלי אנו ואמרו זה אלי אנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם. One more time on ya ya la la ya ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la ya la la ya la la ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
We're on page 42, and I'll invite you to look both on this page and also on the screen as we share some English words to go with this next prayer.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ושלום You know these words, but they're right up there tiny. Sometimes I lay under the moon and I thank God I'm breathing. And I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. But I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, and negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, praying. I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be
Eloheinu Adonai,
Hashkivenu
Adonai, Eloheinu Lishalom,
V'hamidenu
V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim. Baruch את אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
In a moment, we're going to turn to page 46. And after this opening meditation, asking God to open our lips that we might declare God's praise, we'll move into silence from page 48 through page 64. I'll invite each of us to rise now as we move into our Amidah.
אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי אגיד תהילתך.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha.
I really want to tell you about my epic fail this morning with the preschoolers when I realized that even though they sing the word shalom a lot, I was pretty sure I had never actually told them what it meant. And they kind of, they feel what it means, and I was trying to explain it, and I was like, really, it was not good. And then I started to kind of say, it was very like Cantor Mary. I was like, it's, when your whole soul is just filled up with the essence of, and this one little girl goes, challah! And I thought, I feel shalom right now. When you said that, I just feel like I know that I can bring wholeness, and so can you, right? So we learned a little something. So just invite you to take that in. Where can I make wholeness a little more real? We'll lift these words up together. Ose shalom.
Ose shalom bimroma יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ויאמרו אמן את גנו עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ויאמרו אמן יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן.
So we just keep expanding our hearts and our hopes for those who are in need of this prayer for peace, really for them, but we say it's a prayer for healing. It's shlemut. It's really, we're asking that they realize and know that we are holding space of healing with them and that we hope one day what is in any way broken will be made whole again. Page 253. מי שברך אבותינו ואמותינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב שרה רבקה רחל ולאה הוא יברך את החולים. We turn our attention to the screen as well as invite us to lift up names of those in our community who are in need of healing in this room. I'll invite you to lift names up now. Thank you, or put them in the chat and Zoom. Thanks.
שברך אבותינו מקור הברכה לאמותינו. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing and let us say Amen. מי שברך אמותינו מקור הברכה לאבותינו. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of the body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
So not only did we celebrate one simcha today, which we called Rafa up, and with his family, they lit candles and blessed our wine, but we have another simcha, another joyous event that we're celebrating in our community as well. And so very soon, Avi and Heather are going to join together under the chuppah in a few short weeks as they formally become husband and wife under the laws of the state and also of the Jewish tradition. And in honor of that, we have a special blessing tonight for the two of them. And so I want to invite them up now. I'll invite us to rise. When I was speaking to you the other day, one of the things that I remarked when we were talking is about the fact that there are lots of milestones in every couple. And though some of the normal ones, because of the pandemic, you haven't gotten to do, we laughed about the fact that you were like vacation together. The truth is, you have hit milestones even if they've been difficult. It's the hard stuff that makes a relationship real, and it's the hard stuff that cements the relationship. And I can personally say that as I watched the two of you navigate the pain, Avi, of losing a grandparent, and I saw you there with him, I saw you telling stories with him, I saw you fully present for one another. That's the makings of what a relationship really is. I know this hasn't been an easy year for either of your families as you each lost grandparents. But I know that it's your strength together as a couple that's going to help you weather any storm. The Besht, the Baal Shem Tov, famously said that from every person comes a light. But when one person meets their true soulmate, their lights intermingle and a brighter light comes out, greater than either of those two lights. It's clear that each of you have a light within. But what's also clear from watching the two of you is that your light together shines so brightly. And so in honor of that, I offer you this blessing. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yikuneka. May God cause God's face to shine upon you and give you grace. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God always smile upon you and grant you a life of wholeness and peace. As together we say, Amen. And let's sing a little bit to them. What do we think?
Sorry, that was with a mask on. Siman
Tov,
tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov, siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov, siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov, yeilanu, 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 ulechol Israel, yeilanu, yeilanu, ulechol Israel. Yelanu, ulechol Israel. Yelanu, yelanu, ulechol Israel. Mazal tov.
And we can all be seated. Shabbat Shalom. So, this week's Torah portion, I always laugh about the fact that at least last week and this week, and then you take a break for the golden calf next week, but then the two portions afterwards are filled with so many nouns. God tells the people to build a home for God, a tabernacle, a mishkan in Hebrew. And in it, we have any number of supplies, from the aptly named Ner Tamid, or the eternal light, which is in this week's Torah portion, to the table that we place bread on, to the way that the curtains should look, up until the way that the priest should dress. And we find that the high priest needs to wear 8 different garments, with a regular priest wearing 4. I mean, we're talking a robe, we're talking a headdress, we're even talking down to the priest's underpants. That's how specific the Torah is about these priests. And we're told, by the way, that a priest holds no sanctity unless he puts on, and unfortunately it's just a he, unless he puts on that clothing. And when the priest takes off that clothing, he is no different, he is no better, he is no holier than anyone else. but wearing that clothing, he is endowed with a certain spiritual power that every single Israelite must respect. And respect them they did. Now, there are moments in Jewish history where those priests, the ones who were responsible for doing all of the sacrifices, were not respected. Famously, Korach, who is related to the high priest, Aaron, draws a rebellion up and says, enough. We're not going to listen to you because every single one of us is holy. So why you, Aaron? Why you, Moses? Why should you be above us? In fact, none of us should listen to any of us because we all are equal. Now, God helps Moses put down that rebellion for one simple reason. And it's a reason that I want to talk about tonight, because when you think about the hierarchy of the priest, one important question does come to mind, which is, who the heck are they? If you think about it, these are guys that were born into this. They're the priests in the Torah because their parents were priests. It was passed down through the line. And by the way, I'm related to them. Right? Anybody who is a Kohen, and Katz means Kohen Sadiq, meaning I'm related to Aaron, the guy that Korach is rebelling against. Anyone related to a priest has the potential to be a priest. It's like the old joke about the man who goes to the rabbi and he says, Rabbi, I want more than anything else for you to make me a Kohen, right? To make me related to those priests. And the rabbi says, I don't understand. Like, why do you need this so bad? I can't do this for you. I can't just turn around, snap my fingers and make you a Kohen. And the man leaves very upset, but on his way out, the rabbi stops him and he says, but explain to me this. Why is it so important that you become a Kohen? And the man says, well, my father was, and my grandfather was, and my great-grandfather was. And the rabbi says, well, you're a Kohen. Now, the idea that you might be holier than the Kohen, the idea that you might be smarter than the Kohen, the idea that you might be closer to God than the Kohen is an interesting conundrum if you're just a random Israelite. You're just a random Jew sitting there. Because it seems at first not fair. Why should you respect leadership that you might be better than just simply because they are leaders? And this tension is a tension that I've been thinking about this week. Because I happened to remember a story, and I was studying it, that I think speaks to this problem, which is how much should you listen to authority and how much should you not? Now, this is one of the ultimate questions that we ask that's raised by the concept of the priest, because when we look out at the world at large, we notice there's a lot of people in a lot of different positions of authority that we may or may not respect. You might, for example, feel like you could do a better job of being a rabbi than me. You might feel like you might know more or judge better than the judge who's standing before you. You might feel like the politician who happened to be in that space knows nothing about the world, but you do. And the question is, do you negate that? If you know you are smarter than them, if you know that you've done better research than them, if you think your perspective matters more than them, should you discount them or should you stand there and allow them to have the authority that is invested in them by the nature of their position in the world? It's a really challenging question. And in the Talmud, it comes up. So there's a rabbi whose name is Rabbi Yehoshua. He lives around the time of the first century. And Yehoshua, first or second century actually. And Yehoshua is challenged by this very notion. He's known very clearly in rabbinic literature, in the Talmud, as maybe the smartest one of his generation. In fact, it says in the Talmud that when Yehoshua dies, wisdom and knowledge disappear from the world, that good reasoning disappears from the world, which makes it all the more difficult when the head of the rabbinic establishment, whose name is Rabban Gamliel, makes a huge mistake. And the huge mistake has actual dire consequences. You see, in the ancient world, before people had an understanding of astronomy, the way that they would decide when a new month would form is they look up in the sky and they would see that a new moon had come. And they needed witnesses to look up to see that new moon and to attest to the new moon. And so one day, Gamliel brings in the witnesses who say to him, yeah, we saw the new moon last night. And so he declares it a new month. However, the next night, when someone looked up in the sky, they didn't see the moon, which meant that the witnesses were actually off by a day. Now, Yehoshua knew this, but Gamliel stuck to his guns. And he said to himself, I am allowed to make this decision, and I start the month when I say the month starts. I am the authority. And Yehoshua is left with a problem. Now, Yehoshua's big problem is that new month that first started was actually the month of Tishrei, which is the month when Rosh Hashanah falls. So he didn't just date a new month wrong, he dated a new year wrong. And if you notice, 10 days after the month of Tishrei starts is what? Yom Kippur. Which means that you, if you are wrong, could be eating on Yom Kippur. You could be working on Yom Kippur. And so left with that problem, he has to figure out what to do. And so he starts to speak out against Gamliel. And he says, look, this guy's wrong. You are all going to celebrate Yom Kippur on the wrong day. And that's a big deal. And Gamliel says, I want you to come to me carrying a walking stick and a money purse, both of which you're not allowed to do on Yom Kippur, on the day when you deemed it Yom Kippur, not on the day I did. Meaning, I want you to break your integrity. I want you to break your sense of when Yom Kippur is by coming to visit me on that day. Now, Yehoshua isn't sure what to do. Does he listen? Does he heed Gamliel's call or not? So he first goes to his friend, Rabbi Akiva, who points out that the Torah says to humanity, you shall establish sacred times. It's in Leviticus chapter 23. And he points out that it says you, not I, even though it comes from God. Therefore, God wants us to establish sacred times, even if the risk is that the sacred times might be wrong. But Yehoshua isn't convinced. So he goes to his friend, Rabbi Dosa, and he says to Rabbi Dosa, I need a better explanation. And Dosa says to him, look, if you question this, it means you're going to question everything that comes out of the court system in the ancient world. It means that you potentially are going to poke holes in the integrity of the ability of society to function. Courts only work, law only works because people have trust in them. If you start eroding the foundation of law, law will crumble around you. Even with the risk of making mistakes, even with the risk of getting it wrong, even with the risk of disagreeing potentially with the cosmos and with God, you have to give him the ability to rule. And Yehoshua realizes this. And he shows up on Yom Kippur carrying that money purse and carrying that walking stick. And when Gamliel sees him, he embraces him and he kisses him and he says, welcome, my student and my teacher. Because he realizes that Yehoshua gets it. And so later in Yehoshua's life, when another rabbi questions the authority of the masses, that all of the other rabbis believe one thing about the kosherness of an oven, and this rabbi, Rabbi Eliezer, doesn't, Yehoshua stands up and reminds them about the lesson he learned that day. And even when God appears and says, hey, guys, Eliezer's right, Yehoshua throws back God's words in God's face. God says, you said in the Torah that the Torah is ours. And not only that, you said in the Torah that it's our job to decide along with who the majority opinion is. And if the majority opinion is X, we must go with X. Now, I'm not going to lie. That's a really hard thing to stomach. It's a hard thing to stomach when you don't agree with the people around you making the decisions. It's a hard thing to stomach when you might not like the court that sits in front of you. But the challenge is a system has to work because we allow it to have the authority it does. The priesthood did because we allowed the priesthood to be endowed with that authority. The courts do because we allow the courts to be endowed with that authority. An individual cannot question and go against what the broader system allows. But I do want to point out that society as a whole can change its mind. And herein lies the great tension. Because later in the relationship between Gamliel and Yehoshua, Gamliel once again humiliates Yehoshua in front of everyone. And what do the people do? It's then that the whole community of judges rises up and deposes Rabban Gamliel. They kick him out. They say to him, you are not kind, you are not wise, you are not the kind of leader we need. He has crossed a line and he has lost the ability to lead again. An individual may not have the power, but many individuals united into community do. Now I bring this up because that tension of when to listen to experts and when not to, when to heed the advice of a court and when not to, is one of the big challenges of living in the modern age when we have access to information that we don't always do throughout time. I'm listening to one of my favorite writers, Chuck Klosterman. He's got a new book. It's called The 90s. And he actually begins the book by talking about the fact that he talks about this idea called the Mandela effect. Has anybody ever heard of it before? It's the idea that for a lot of time, people thought Nelson Mandela had died in prison, even though Nelson Mandela never actually did die in prison. He died quite an old man. And there's plenty of times where kind of a community will remember something wrong. And he says that that's actually a product of the 90s. Because in this day and age, we have so much access to information, you can look something up very quickly and you can find out the truth. But the 90s were this perfect storm where these kind of things started setting in, where we paid enough attention to pop culture and had enough television channels to get a lot of information. But when you were sitting in a bar and someone said something, you couldn't authenticate it, which means it would make its way, worm its way into your brain and you would remember. In this day and age, because we have the ability to look up so much information, we are armchair experts in everything. And in doing so, we question everything in a way that we didn't even when I was a child in the 1990s. But in doing so, we can't forget that there is, I know, I just heard a bunch of people moan when I said that. Yes, I was a child in the 1990s. But I want to challenge us to say that sometimes we have to put that kind of questioning spirit, we have to put that cynicism to rest. And we have to allow ourselves to understand that the world works in part because it is imperfect. That even though we might be Yehoshua staring down Gamliel, the systems as a whole are good, even if they make mistakes sometimes. The same goes with the priesthood. The same goes with the courts. The same goes for the government. And so hopefully we take that to heart. And as we walk that tension, even when we are frustrated, we thank ourselves that systems exist that on the whole care and protect us. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to turn now to page 282, and I'll invite us to rise for Elenu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Page 287.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We turn to page 294. And our thoughts turn to those that we've loved and who we've lost. We read the following names of yard sites that we're observing this Shabbat: Jacob Abelson, William Becker, Lou Boyarsky, Edith Ellis, Ross Fenster, Helen Fleischman, Harry Friedland, David Gladstone, Chicky Goldberg, Pearl Grant, Rosalind Handler, Gay Hathaway, Sylvia Kaplan, Elaine Katcher, Florence Kurzman, Mayor Laria, Charles Lenchich, Solomon Levine, Carol Lobelson, Lottie Luft, Rose Maltonfort, Richard Myers, Rose Minsky, Ruth Lipschutz Malner, Hudson Overdorf, Jacob Pecker, Herbert Pimes, Bertha Petofsky, James Murray Rakoff, Mark Rosenberg, Robert Rosenberg, Sam Siegel, Rose Serlin, Esther Sonduk, Helene Spitz, Edith Stein, Evan Wagman, Samuel Weinberg, David Wolf, Benjamin Wolf, and Samuel Yassin. And those who are in their Shiva and Shloshim periods of mourning, we recall Ellen Berman, mother of Doug Berman. And I announce one death that you'll hear about in the coming hours or days. We offer our condolences to Amy Clayman, who lost her mother, Sheila. And so, although it's customary not to formally say Kaddish, we offer them our condolences. And you'll hear more about funeral and Shiva arrangements in the days to come. We join together, page 294, but I'll invite you, for those who are observing a yard site that might not have been on this list, or those who are within their 1 year period of mourning, to say the names aloud or put them into the chat. We join together. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbam. V'yamad yivrach yirateh v'yamlich malchuteh. V'chayachon uv'yom echon uv'chayed l'chol Beit Yisrael. B'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbam v'varach li'olam u'lamei almaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitzadar v'yitalal v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'rechu. Leila mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, damiram b'yama b'imru amen. Yehei shalom araba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al Israel b'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al Israel b'imru amen. Please be seated. So a few announcements, and then 2 closing songs. The first announcement is that tomorrow morning services are at 10 a.m. Before that, we've got Torah study at 8:30 a.m. And are you leading it? All right. So Rick is leading it. And then at 10 a.m., we welcome Rafa formally to the Bima as Bar Mitzvah, as we celebrate him and his family at Shabbat morning services.
And all of you, too, if you want.
Yes, and all of you who want to come. In addition, a few announcements. The 25th is a program where we are going to be inviting a scholar. His name is Bruce Haynes. He's a professor out of, I think, UCLA, I think. One of the schools in California that's a very good school. And he's a scholar actually in, he just wrote a book which is called Jews of African Descent. And so in honor of Black History Month, he's going to be talking about the intersection between anti-Semitism and racism and how they interplay. And he'll be joining us actually virtually at Friday night services. And in lieu of the sermon, we'll stay after services, and he'll be our featured speaker that night. So hopefully you can join us. In addition, Purim is coming up really soon. And so not only can you put your name in for Mishloach Manot, for baskets to go out to family and friends in the congregation, but you can also just save the date for our Purim spiel.
So many dates.
For our reading, which is going to be the Wednesday night of Purim. The Purim spiel is right after that on that Saturday night following, and any number of programs. If you want to come to the carnival, you can. We'd love to see you there, which is the Sunday before that. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think, well, no.
No? Okay.
I mean, just that Purim is a 10-day holiday at Ner Tamid.
I know. Yeah. It's the real Yamim Noraim
It's the
here.
true like Chagim season for us.
So hold on, before we do our closing song, we've got another closing song. And so we
My
will
closing
sing
song is
together.
first.
Ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Cantor. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
And so
That-
we're
that
really
was
closing if you
beautiful.
turn your attention to the screen.
Thank you.
Olam Chesed Yibaneh, the world is built on love.
Olam chesed yibaneh, yalalai, yalalai. 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 I must build this world. I must build this world from love. Yalalai, yalalai. And you must build this world from love. Yalalai, yalalai. And if we build this world from love, yalalai, yalalai, then God will build. Then God will build this world with us. Yalalai, 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 yalalai. Olam chesed yibaneh. Yalalai, yalalai, yalalai. Olam chesed yibaneh. Yalalai, yalalai, yalalai.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you
Shabbat
for
Shalom
my
to those
song.
online. Shabbat